Hey, what is up guys, I'm Xteria, and in this video we're going to be talking about the meta comps we can play in patch 14.5. Before we get into it, you can find this in the description down below where you can find different slides and it can guide us to different locations of different slides we need to look to. For example, if you want to see how to play brand comp, you just click on this icon and it'll pop up like some sort of text here. Click on the text and it'll show you to the comp on how to play it. Before we get right into it, let's talk about the different slides I have that I made for you guys. This one is a tier list of first item slams, and what this means is these are the best items to 5 streak with, meaning you can 5 win streak all the way up to Krugs. And this is important because we make max amount of econ and we save a lot of HP. You may notice that I put IE as B tier. This item is not bad, it just means that at the beginning it's not too useful compared to Deathblade, mainly because IE needs a second item to back up the damage, like with IE and maybe a guard breaker with IE would amplify the damage even more. Just the one item itself, Deathblade is a better item because just base AD stats is better early game than it is having a crit item early game. And then the items you see here that has X, it's just utility items. So this means it's always good no matter what, depending on what you need. If you need armor break item, you can get Even Shroud, Last Whisper. If you need Magic Resist Shred, you can get Onyx Spark or even Void Staff. Or if you need anti-heal, Relicon is fine for that. And red buff, most of the time you don't really use red buff as an anti-heal item, you use it as like a damage item. So I also say it's a B tier because you kind of want to use your bow components to make either a Kraken Slayer or you want to use it to make a Gwynsu's Rage Blade. A new item that's actually very strong and actually kind of popular in the early game is Asterix Gauge. This item is actually so powerful because you can use it as either an early game tank item or you can use it as like a frontline damage item. Like you put this on Graves, you'll win very hard with it. Or you can put it on Shaco, that's also fine as well. But yeah, other than that, the main idea is any mana item is good, like blue buff, adaptive helm, spirit shojin, or any sort of base AD item, like Deathblade is really good, or any of these tank items that you see, like Protector's Vow, Sunfire. Sunfire is very great because it's also a damage item, so you can win streak with it really hard. Or if you have to, the Sylas Lamp is not bad either. If you have 2 gloves, you might as well do it if you want to win streak. Or like same thing like Warmongs, it's a good base just health item because you get flat HP. And then the items that are like really bad to build would be like Archangel Staff or Giant Slayer or even Deathcap. Like these items are just not good enough in the current meta, even for early game or even for later in the game, because Deathcap and Archangel Staff honestly is not too good, but it's good in some units. Like for example, they're really good on either Ziggs or Aurora, but it's only for like specific things. And speaking of specific things, IE is very good on Shaco Start as well. Because I put it in B tier, it doesn't mean it's bad, it just means for the majority of units, it's not good enough on them. So extra notes I can give you for this patch would be like, Flickerblades is super broken for any of these attack speed champions. If you get Flickerblades, it's basically a guaranteed top 4 if you play around these units. And then like I said earlier, Asterix Gauge is just super broken, is really strong early game, so if you want to win streak, you can slam this item and you can use it as a tank item or you can use it as a damage item. And later in the game, is actually really good on all 5 cost units besides Aurora, because she's a mage. So even though Veigar is also a mage, it's still pretty good on him. And if you want to play around blue buff, Pandora's items is actually really OP for blue buff users, mainly because having 2 tiers is really hard to get in the game. So if you have Pandora's items, you can force that blue buff on your board. If you know you're 100% going to be playing AD, try to get at least 3 combat augments or like some sort of item augments is fine as well. The main reason why is because if you have an econ augment with AD, it'll help you accelerate your gameplay to fast 8 and look for your AD units. But then the problem is you might get outcapped by an AP comp that has maybe 1 combat augment, and that's actually pretty huge for them because AP comps are burst comps, meaning they'll one-shot your board. But AD comps, they're more of shredding your boards, and you want to amplify the damage of shred. So therefore, having more combat augments with shred helps a lot in the long run. And if you don't know what augments to take, autumn augments are best if you just don't know what to do. And the reason why autumn augments are super important in this patch is because in patch 14.4, they took out 2 components total. So this means we get less items throughout the game. So having item augments are also really good to have. So finally getting into the tier list, we're going to be talking about 2 different types, which is just regular base comps and conditional comps. And the difference between the 2 is the regular comps is you can play it from any reasoning or any point of the game, meaning you could just force it, you'll be fine. But conditional comps, you have to have specific items or specific augments in order to play them. Like for example, Ranged Shaco is actually very powerful. Or if you want to play Renekton as a main carry, you have to turn him into a Rapidfire to make him destroy the board. Compared to just base comps, like for example, Street Demon, which we're going to be talking about here. In order to play a Street Demon brand, you want the opener of having a Street Demon start with Xayah, Mundo, and Echo. And you just have a +1 unit, like you can have a +1 Techie, or you can have a +1 Bruiser, like Alistair. This is fine. And the direction you kind of want to play this comp is having obviously the Street Demon opener with a tier. The reason why you want a tier, because you want Shojin. Or you can build Adaptive Helm, that's also fine as well. What you need for this board is you need mana item, meaning like any sort of mana regen, like Shojin or Adaptive Helm, and you need some sort of magic resist shred on the board, like Void Staff or Onyx Spark. You can throw Nico as well. And the reason why you need that, because it amplifies your magic damage, so you need those stuff on the board. The playstyle you want to do on this board could be either win streak or lose streak, so basically saying you can play from any angle. There are some comps in the game where you can only play from a certain direction of certain playstyles, because sometimes you might need, for example, 2 tiers. In order to get 2 tiers, you might have to lose streak and item prioritize on carousel. But this comp is pretty unique items, like they all use different kind of type of components and you're fine. As long as you have Shojin and Jewel Gauntlet on brand, you're fine. You don't need really anything else. The augments you kind of want to take for this comp is to have Econ augment, so you can fast 8 and maybe fast 9 afterwards. Or you can look for an item augment, that's fine. And then some sort of item augment or combat augment is fine. And for last augment, I would say combat is best for this board. If you can get Street Demon Emblem on any of these augment turns, it's fine as well. And speaking of which, Street Demon Emblem on Ziggs is actually really good. Or if you want a different type of emblem, Strategist Emblem on Samira is also great. Speaking of Samira, if you have extra 80 items left over, you can just throw on Samira, it's fine. The thing to note is if you do have a Street Demon Emblem on Ziggs, then you can take out Jinx and throw in either Garen, or you can throw in Yuumi, so you can cap out the board even better, because there's no point to play a Street Demon. And the best artifacts you can play around this comp is with Brand, having either Mana Zane, Cypher's Focus, or Zhonya's, or if you get a take one, for example, for Nico, you can do Light Shield Crest, Innervating Locket, or even Unending Despair is actually really good on Nico. If you're wondering what you play for level 8 board, it's essentially all these units besides Kubuko, and for a budget version of Samira, just look for Rengar. Basically about it. And positioning, it depends on your Street Demon positioning, so that's the reason why I set it up like this, because it just depends on the overlay of Street Demon overall. The next comp we're going to be talking about here is Anima Squad, and I see a lot of people say they can't really win on Anima Squad because there's a lot of misinformation on how to play this comp, and I will explain those informations later. For now, we're just talking about the opener first, because in order to play this comp, you should actually have the opener for Anima Squad if you want to play this comp. So the best opener I prefer is to have a Seraphine, Vayne, Sylas, and a +1 Vanguard with Sylas, because Sylas gives me your main tank, so having Vi, if she can be level 2, is great as well on the board. If you can't have a Vayne, Alawi is also great as well. Or if you have Alawi 2 somehow, you can do with a Shyvana and then play with a Seraphine carry, that's also fine as well. It's just essentially just Anima Squad opener plus whatever you can mix with them. The direction you want to take is technically tank item start. The reason why is because the Anima opener with the weapons is actually very powerful, so just let the Anima Squad weapon do its thing. And if you're wondering what Anima Squad weapons to take, just take an 80 damage weapon, because those are the best ones to take. And what you need on the board is to have at least sword items for Xayah, and the main sword item you want is IE on her. The rest of the items don't really matter. And I do show like her BIS technically here is Shojin, IE, and Last Whisper, but essentially you can do IE plus a bunch of damage items. You don't really need Shojin on Xayah for Anima Squad, as long as she could just one-shot everything, because Anima Squad is going to be super tanky, since Anima Squad provides a lot of armor and magic resist and a lot of amp. If you just build straight damage Xayah, it's actually great as well to do. But you're going to need some sort of armor shred item on the board, so you need either a Last Whisper or even Shred on Leona. If you don't have that, your 80 weapons will not do enough damage. If you do decide to play Anima Squad, the playstyle you want to do is a win streak, because if you play lose streak Anima, you're just going to keep bleeding out forever, and once you hit stage 4-2 for your level 8 rolldown, and if you don't hit Aurora or everything level 2, you're just going to keep bleeding out and it just end up getting an 8th or maybe like a 6 or something. So if you do decide to play lose streak Anima, just hope that you luck out hitting your units. And the thing that I want to say here is when you hit level 8, in all honesty, Jhin is a bait. You don't really need Jhin on level 8. Just look for a Bastion unit like either Renekton, hopefully, or better yet, a level 2 Sejuani. The reason why is because Anima Squad itself is powerful enough for you to win rounds with. So once you hit a level 2 Leona, hopefully, and maybe a level 2 Xayah, level 1 is okay. As long as she has 3 damage items, you're good to go. Just take out the Jhin and then have better tanks on the board. Like for example, like I said earlier, just have some sort of Bastion on the board, and you can proceed to level 9. Then look for a Jhin on level 9, throw him out, because you're going to need the Marksmen later to finish off the game for that extra damage with Marksmen for Xayah. And you also get Dynamo on Aurora. So a lot of information is honestly Jhin on 8 is a bait, so just remember that. The artifacts you can play around this comp is having some sort of Fish and Bones on Xayah is actually really great, because sometimes you could potentially one-shot the backline, or Collector is very good on her, or even Sniper's Focus. And then for Aurora's artifact items, you kind of want either Mana Zane, or some funny enough, a Trench Cloak is actually really good, because you can have multiple Auroras on the board, and you can summon +3 units on the board. This positioning, you kind of want Aurora to be frontline with this item, so that it will pop right away, and then she could just summon a bunch of units on the board. And Zonios is also really good on her as well. For Leona's case, any sort of tank like artifact is fine, in all honesty. The augments you kind of want to take on this comp would be Emblem no matter what. Just always take Emblem if you can. And if not, Econ or item augment's fine with items after that, or combat augment. Essentially, it's just Emblem with whatever you can make. Up next, we got one of my favorite comps to play, which is A.M.P on Annie. And the opener you want to do could be either Cypher opener for loose streaking, because this comp you need 2 tiers, so you can make a blue buff on Annie, so you can do a loose streak opener. Or you can just do a typical Morgana opener with Jhin and then 2 Bastions or whatever frontline you could find, and you can just branch out of that. Or if you want to, you can play with a Nidalee opener and then just do whatever you can with Nidalee, like play maybe Nitro with it or something. It's up to you. You can do whatever, but the direction you need is to have a tier so you can make a Shojin or blue buff for Annie. So you can make Shojin if you want to instead of blue buff on Annie, but blue buff is the best way of playing her. And what you need is some sort of mana item, like I said earlier, either Shojin or blue buff. And you need some sort of magic resist shred on the board, like either Ionic Spark on Nico, or you can put Voice Staff on Annie. Either one's fine. And then the playstyle you want to do is loose streak, but unless you have Pandora's augment, then you can do win streak, which is also viable because Pandora's allows you to get that blue buff really easily. The augments you want to play around her is either econ or item, and then items, and then either item or combat. So basically saying you just want as much items as you can because you have multiple carries with it, and on top of that you can guarantee blue buff with voice staff. And then if you have emblems such as strategist, just throw it on Samira, which is good as well. The artifacts you can play around is having either Mana Zane or Lichbane on Annie, and then Nico could do whatever tank items that you can find, and Samira could do whatever AD ones you can find, like for example Collector or Infinity Force is fine as well. If you want to play the level 8 board here, just basically visualize to not have any 85 cost units here, so you don't have Viego, Zac, and Samira, and you just play with LeBlanc on the board at level 8. So therefore you have 4 strategists with 4 A.M.P, and then try to hopefully high roll one of the 5 cost units like Samira. If you high roll her, then your board's gonna be super strong. If you don't, hopefully you can last until level 9 until then, but most of the time you might want to keep rolling until you find a Samira and high roll it, or get it from Carousel. Like, you need her no matter what on this board. Unless you're lucky enough that the lobby is super weak, then you can probably carry with just Annie too, it's fine as well. And positioning here doesn't really matter too much because you're going to be playing Street Demons, as you have Nico, Echo, and Samira is going to activate that Street Demon, but if you don't have the Samira in at the time, then whatever positioning works. Whatever AP items you have left over, you can throw it on Yuumi. All she needs is just blue buff, and then plus whatever AP items you can find. So it doesn't really matter. Even if she doesn't have blue buff, just put as much AP on her as you can, because the way how her A.M.P works is the more A.M.P you have on the board, the more mana regen she gets. So therefore, just flat AP or any AP item is good on her. Another trick you can do for this comp to make it even better is if you have a lot of econ augment, say if you have double econ, then you can just fast 9 and play for this board as well. But the issue is, if other people are also going to play Annie, then hopefully at least one person or nobody's contesting you to do that, so you can roll for Annies at level 9. But if you happen to play like a win streak comp, and for whatever reason you have a lot of HP, then you start losing on stage 3, then you have a lot of econ augments, like 2 for whatever reason, just fast 9, then maybe transfer your 80 items that you have onto Samira, and play her as the main carry. And having early Zac is really good because you can stack his blobs, meaning he could be your best tank ever. And I forgot to say this earlier too, if you have Zac too, you have decent amount of stacks, like maybe like 20 stacks or something, then you can just make him the main tank, just transfer the items from Nico to Zac. That's fine. Moving on to one of the highest win rate comps and probably the strongest in the current meta, which is Miss Fortune, that I got 8th place with last game, funny enough. In order to play Miss Fortune Dynamo, the opener can be literally anything, but most part I like to do is the Morgana opener with the Bastion, and you can have Jhin as the MF item holder. What you want is for the direction is to have a bunch of swords so you can have MF items or tiers for Elise items. So if you want to play AP route, then hopefully you get blue buff for Elise because it's her best item, and then whatever AP items is good on her, like some sort of anti-heal or magic resist shred, it's fine. But what you really need on the board is to have IE on MF because that's her best item to make her ability crit. And also, you either need blue buff or adaptive helm, which is basically some sort of mana item on Elise. Since you're going to be playing Syndicate, the Kingpin hat that you want to put on is Braum. So with the Syndicate buff, you want to put it on Braum. So you have to focus mostly on tank items and damage items. The playstyle you want to do most of the time is win streaking, but you can do from a loose streak angle as well to play this board. And the augment order is econ or item, so you can like accelerate your gameplay. And then afterwards, you need some sort of item so you can have better odds to build like BIS MF, and then a combat augment. Once you hit level 9, just make Zac to your main tank afterwards, and then just transfer the tank items to him and Kingpin MF. Because there's no point in Kingpin on the Braum if he doesn't have any items. The higher cap version you can do is this version of the board. And the reason why this is a better higher cap is because you have more legendary units on the board. You have a really good tank, which is Zac. You also have a secondary tank, which is Kubuko. And you also gain a Renekton that gives you more attack speed to have MF hit more so she can cast more later. And then to have a Poppy in to get that Bastion in with Renekton, and you also gain Cyber Boss for Kubuko. This version is as if you're winning super hard, you could just fast 9, and in order to win with this board, you have to 2-star literally everything here. So if you're not comfortable with doing this style, you could just do the base style, which is this is fine as well. The artifacts you want to play around MF at least is Collector, Sniper's Focus, or Mana Zane. And then for release, it's either Mana Zane or Zhonya's. And then Aurora is either Mana Zane, or if you have Trench Cloak, just throw in the front line, and she'll clone 3 of herself, and you can summon 3 more units on the board with this Trench Cloak on Aurora. And then either Zhonya's is fine on her as well, and then Braum could use whatever tank ones you can get, and this also works with Zac later as well. The thing to know here is you don't have to build these items exactly on MF, it's just literally any sword items you can get with IE. You can put Last Whisper on her too if you want to, if you don't have Even Shroud on your Braum. Next up we got is the Loose Streak comp, which everyone likes to do, is Cypher. And the thing about Cypher is you can use this opener for any comp, and you can just play Loose Streak. And there's many different comps you can pivot into. You don't have to play this board exactly. You can pivot into a Renekton Rapidfire board, or you can pivot into a Zeri board, or you can pivot into an Annie board. It doesn't really matter. But for this style specifically, if you want to play for Draven Cypher, which is also really good, in order to play this board is to have a Cypher opener, or the direction you want is to have swords, or even the augment hostile takeover. This is also really good direction as well. What you need is to have IE on Draven. That's his best item to have, which is his core item to do damage. And the playstyle you want to do is Loose Streak. Unless you have hostile takeover, then you want to do Win Streak, so it's different. The augments you want to take is either Econ or item, and then 2 items to combat. And then Cypher stacks, the best is around above 250 stacks, which is around 22 gold. The reason why is because you can probably get Pan to get a chance to get Rapidfire Renekton. If you want to pivot into that, that works as well. But if you want to play for this Draven board specifically, you at least need somewhere around like 500-ish stacks to be super strong with this board. The best one is 700 stacks if you can get it. That means you guarantee a Radiant IE and Shojin with a Ludens, so you can make Draven one-shot everything. But 700 stacks is too hard to get, and even 500 stacks is really hard to get in general. So you can play around at least like 400 stacks if you want to guarantee a top 4. Then you have to 3-star Galio and Draven at level 8. The thing you have to high roll is just having a Renekton at level 8. If you can't get it, then you can use whatever Bastion until you find a Renekton. And then Zed can use whatever items. You can put these clothes on him, or you could just do his default BIS, which is like IE, Hodge, +1 like Edge of Ninth or Sterax. The artifacts you want to play around Draven is to have either Ludens, Sniper's Focus, or Collector. And then for Galio's, any of the tank ones is fine on him. And for Zed, the best ones currently is Death Defiance with either Mittens or an Infinity Force is good on him as well. The thing to note about at least what you notice here is the Exotech units. Whatever damage ones, just put it on Zeri, and then whatever tank ones, just put it on Sejuani. I know some of you might want to play Zeri as the main carry here, but trust me, Zeri's not strong enough this patch, so don't do it. Just play for either Draven 3 or pivot to a different comp. Now moving on to the next comp we're going to be talking about is Morgana. And Morgana is pretty easy and simple. All you have to do is just play the opener, which is just Morgana, Poppy, and Jax, and then once you level 4, then you throw in Jhin. Pretty simple. The direction you want is to have tiers so you can build blue buff on Morgana. You need to force the blue buff no matter what. You need blue buff and Gunblade on Morgana, and then at least a Gargoyle Stone Blade on Poppy, then whatever tech items you can find. The playstyle you can do is either Loose Streak or Win Streak. It doesn't really matter, but the best way of doing it is Loose Streaking for tiers, so you can gain that blue buff on Morgana, and then you can do whatever afterwards. The best augments to play around this board is to have item or reroll augment, and then item again, and then either item or combat augment. The concept is if you don't need any more item augments, just look for a combat one. And the best emblems you can pick is a Bastion on Morgana. This will make her super strong. Just take out the anti-heal item like Merlicon and just put the anti-heal item on Elise. That's fine as well. And the best artifacts you can play around this would be either Blind Jeweled, Mana Zane, Zhonya's for Morgana, and then for Poppy, any of the tank ones are fine. If you want to look more in depth, like guide of this comp, because there is a certain way to play at certain levels, I do have a video about it. Just look for this video in my YouTube channel, which will be this thumbnail. Next up, we got everyone else's favorite comp, which is but a comp that I see commonly is Aphleios Marksmen Vanguard. In order to play this comp, you essentially need a strong opener. Most of the time, it's going to be a Kog Maw with a Kindred to gain that rapid fire. And you have Skarner, so you can gain that Boombot with Kog Maw, and you have a +1 level 2 Vanguard. Like, it could be Vi, or it could be Sylas. I prefer Vi because she's stronger in my opinion. The direction you want for this comp is to have a bow, so you can make a Gwynsu, because you need Gwynsu on Aphleios, and at least an IE on Xayah. The playstyle you want to play this comp, like I said earlier, is a win streak style, so meaning you have to be super strong and just win as much as you can, or win overall all the way up to 5 rounds, or maybe even 10 rounds. The augments you want to pick is item or econ, so you can fast 8 and accelerate your gameplay, but most of the time I like to do either combat or item, and then second to that would be item or combat, and then third is just straight up combat. The emblems you want on this board would be a Marksman, so you can have it on MF, because what Marksman does is it takes away enemies' armor. So MF's ability can continuously just take away the enemy's armor over and over because her ability is technically like a tick damage. And it just replaces Jinx with the MF. The artifacts you want is to have either Collector or Sniper's Focus or Mana Zane on Xayah, and the best items on Aphleios hands down is Flickerblade, the one you see here in the middle. If not, you can do Sniper's Focus or Collector as well. And Leona can work with any tank item. When you hit level 8, you just roll for this board, and then level 9, just throw an Aurora. Basically about it. Next up we got is Vex, which is two different ways of playing Vex, is Exotech and Divinicorp. And for the Exotech style, most of us know is called Exotech. The opener you want to play for this column is to have Morgana, Jhin, and then the two Bastion units like Poppy and Jax. And when you hit level 5, you could throw in a Naafiri so you can have that Exotech in. Other than that, just play whatever you can to either lose streak or win streak. The reason why lose streak is important is because you need as much tier as you can from Carousel. But the direction you want for this comp is to have tier for blue buff because you need to BIS Vex, which is what you see here. These are her best in slot items. And for Varus, you need either anti-heal and magic resist shred on him so you can one-shot the board. And then like I said earlier, the playstyle you want to do is lose streak so you can prioritize tiers. And the augments you want to do is item or econ. And second to that is items or combat. And last one, it could be either item if you don't have blue buff yet, for whatever reason, pick an item one. If not, just do a combat augment. And the emblems you want to play around is Exotech on Vex. If you don't have blue buff for a reason still, you can play for Hollowbow if the Exotech item is Hollowbow for your Exotech pool. If not, you can do Divinicorp, just throw it on anyone, that's fine as well. The artifacts you play around Varus is Mana Zane or some sort of AP one like DFG, and then for your tank, Sejuani, just play whatever you can with whatever tank items you can find. But the thing that I can note here is that having a Horizon focus on Sejuani is actually really good on her because she would AoE stun everything. And what this item does is if you stun a unit, you do a lot of true damage on the board. And for Vex's artifact items, it could be Mana Zane or funny enough, Fish and Bones. Fish and Bones is great on her because she hits the backline sometimes with this item because it allows you to hit different targets around the board. Or just some sort of AP one like DFG is fine as well. And the Exotech items you want to play for Varus specifically is Hyperfinks is the best one on him because the easiest reason to explain is it just does a lot of damage for him, even though it's an AD item. Other than that, you could get the mana item, which is Hollowbow, that's fine on him as well. And for Sejuani's case, whatever tank items you can find is good on her. The tip I can give is if you can't have Sejuani 2, just play for Mordekaiser tank instead. And once you use Sejuani 2, just transfer the items over and you're good to go with her. And the best items you can find Sejuani is some sort of mana tank items like Spirit, Visage, or either Protector's Vow. Either one's fine. The other style for Vex is Divinicorp. And to do that is pretty simple. The direction you want, same thing, tier for blue buff for her, and the same opener as the Vexotech one, and you need to BIS Vex. So it's basically the same concept as the Exotech Vex. But the difference is, what you want is the Divinicorp Spat. So if you don't have the emblem, you can't really play this comp too efficiently enough. So in order to do this, you need the emblem, look for Urgot, and just put the item on Urgot. Your main tank for this board is going to be a Cho'Gath, and for the +1 unit, it's going to be a J4 because he gives you Vanguard with Rost, and he also gives you Slayer with Senna. So you have really good synergies on the board that you see here. If you cannot find Urgot, it's fine to use Varus until you can fast level 9 and then look for Urgot later. That also is okay to do. Other units you can play around is maybe potentially either Garen or even a Viego if you can't find other legendaries like Renekton. But last patch, they also buffed Divinicorp, so having the 7 Divinicorp is the best way to play this board. So it's just pretty simple. There's really not much to explain. The artifacts you can play around this board is having any sort of tank ones on Cho'Gath, and the thing to note here with Cho'Gath is the Talisman on Ascension on Cho'Gath is actually pretty decent. I don't think it's too good for the Divinicorp style, but if you have really good tank items like Bramble and Declaw, or like Spirit, or even like Steadfast Heart, then maybe this item is pretty valid to have on him. And then for Urgot's best artifact items could be like Collector, or Flickerblades, or even Sniper's Focus. And then Vex is the same items that, like I said, for the Exotech slide. Next up we got is a pretty popular comp, which is Mundo Reroll. And this comp is actually very powerful because it's very simple to play. And on top of that, it does a lot of damage because you have a lot of strong frontline and you also have a pretty strong backline. The opener you want to do is the 2 Bruisers, which is Alistair and Mundo, and the 2 Sorks, which is Xayah and Seraphine. My bad, I mean 2 techies. Essentially, you just want to 3-star them, the Xayah, Seraphine, Mundo, and Alistair, and to fill up the units at level 5, just throw in either a +1 Bruiser, like a Mordekaiser, and then when you hit level 6, I would prefer to have 4 Bruisers, because it'll make Mundo do more damage. And for this board, your main carry is actually going to be Mundo, not Xayah. Xayah is a secondary carry. The direction you want to build for item-wise is built for health items because Mundo is going to be your main carry, and all health items on Mundo no matter what. A lot of people like to do Alistar as the main tank for whatever reason, but the concept of this comp is that Mundo will one-shot with more health items he has on him. And the playstyle you want to do is either lose or win streak. You want to lose streak for belts, or if not, you can play win streak if you have decent amount of belts. The augments you want to do is item or reroll, and then item again. If you still don't have enough belts, another item augment would do, or combat. If you get the Techie emblem, just throw on Alistar. It's the best way of doing it. And then the best artifacts you can play around is for Xayah. You can have Mana Zane, so sort of AP like DFG, or even Sniper's Focus is fine on her. And then for Mundo, the best ones you can put on him is some sort of health artifact item. Like Innervating Logger is probably his best item on him. Or the new item, Indomitable, is actually really strong on Mundo as well. Or you can do Talisman, it's also great as well on him. But yeah, you can essentially play this reroll comp. If you're like under like Emerald, you can just abuse this all the way to Emerald, or even Diamond if you know how to play this comp properly. So if you're looking for a comp you want to force every game, this one's a pretty decent one. Next up we got is a simple reroll comp as well. I told my chat that you could play this and actually win pretty much decent amount of games on him. And surprisingly enough, a lot of them do win. Most of them are like around like under Emerald rank, I would say, or Diamond. So this comp is really good if you want to one-trick this comp as well. To play this comp is essentially just the Kog Maw opener, which is just Kog Maw, Kindred, Skarner, and Vi. And to play this comp, it's pretty simple. It's just 3-star, literally all the 1 and 2 cost units, which is Kog Maw, Kindred, and all the Vanguards that are around that cost. The direction you want is to have both for Krakens on Kog Maw. And yes, these are BIS Kog Maw, but what you could do is you could do triple Kraken, which is actually really popular and powerful on him as well. And the playstyle you need to do for this comp is a win streak. So if you play this comp from a lose streak angle, it's going to be weaker overall. You kind of want to keep winning with this comp. And the augments you want is item or reroll, and then items or combat. And then again, if you don't have decent items, then item. If not, then combat. The emblem you could do is Boombot, and you can just play vertical Boombot instead of vertical Vanguard, and then just play with bruisers with Cho'Gath main tank instead of the Skarner. You can do that as well, and just play a bunch of legendary units overall when you hit fast 9. The artifacts you can play around is Kog Maw with Flickerblades. This is actually really broken on him, and once you have this item on him, you basically guarantee top 4. Other items you can put on him is like Sniper's Focus, or even like Gambler's Blade. Even though it's AP, it has decent amount of attack speed. And for Skarner's case, whatever tank ones you can find on him is great. For the last base comp we're going to be talking about here is Twisted Fate reroll, and it's actually pretty much the same thing. But for those of you that don't know how to play it, the opener essentially is all the syndicates you can find with TF opener on drop, and have a Kog Maw or Kindred, whatever is fine. The direction you want is both for Guinsoo's on TF, because Guinsoo's TF is actually pretty strong. Even though they changed it, it's still pretty good on him. And you need to be as TF, which is these items you see here. If you want to play this comp, you play it from either a win streak, if you have decent items. If you don't have good items, then you play lose streak. The augments you want to do is items or reroll augment. If not, you can do item or combat on the next one. And for the last augment, is either item or combat. If you don't have good items, just pick the item one. The emblems you want to pick on this comp is to have a Syndicate on Draven. If you have 2 Syndicate emblems on this comp, it's basically GG. The items you want to play around TF is the artifacts of Flickerblades. And yes, you may notice the trend now, Flickerblades is broken. Other than that, Wit's End is also really broken on TF, or you can do Gambler's Blade, which is a substitute for having. So basically, whatever artifact you have here that you see, just take out Archangel Staff. And then for Braum is whatever tank items you can find on him. Basically about it to play Twisted Fate. It's not too hard to play. You just want to reroll at 7 on this comp instead of 6, and just 3-star TF, Braum, and the rest of the units, it doesn't really matter. Just hit 8 or 9, play your best board, get top 4, go next game. That's it for the basic comps you can play in the current meta. Now on to the conditional ones, meaning you need specific items or specific augments to play this comp. The first one we're going to be talking about here is Shaco Slayer, and you don't really need artifact items or even like range augment. You can play it without it if you high roll Shaco, so meaning if you have a 2-star Shaco and plus 1 more Shaco with maybe a Mundo 2, it's a pretty good indicator to play it. But the opener you want is Shaco, Alistar, and Mundo. The reason why is because you want to stay low level, you don't want to level up, so you want to play this comp at level 3. And the direction you want for this comp is to have swords, so you can make either Edge of Knight or IE on Shaco, so you can start stacking. And you really need IE on Shaco. That's his best in slot item, which allows him to gain a lot of damage, and it gives him a lot of stats overall for him. The playstyle you kind of want to do for this comp is a win streak, because it means that you can gain a lot of stacks on Shaco, because the more he kills, the more stacks he gets, the more damage you get. The augments you want to do is item or reroll augment. Second to that would be item or combat. And then last one could be combat if you already have pretty good items. The thing I can give a tip about the augments is if you can gain an artifact, that'll be really useful because there's a lot of different artifacts you can see here that you can use. You can use like almost half of them. You can use any of the ranged ones here, or you can use any of the damaged ones here. And then for emblems, if you get Slayer emblem, you can throw it on Renekton. So you could just keep all the Slayers in that you see here. If you don't have Vayne 3, then just get rid of Vayne and just use Renekton instead and put Slayer on him so you can power up your board even more. And speaking of which, Vayne would be your secondary carry. If you want to reroll for both Shaco and Vayne, that's fine. If not, you can play for Shaco 3 and then fast level 8 and then play for Senna 3 instead, which is a better route because you can also potentially get a level 3 J4, which is also really good in the end. So you don't have to worry about Vayne overall. Since Vayne is actually a lot weaker this patch, it's just easier to maybe potentially 3-star Shaco with Vayne. And secondary carry, obviously, is going to be a Zed with similar Shaco items, which is i.e. Hodge, +1, either Edge of Knight or Starax. And then, like the note I said here, if you can gain artifact, it's the best way to play Shaco. Next up, we got is one of my favorite comps, and I actually like to force it every time if I can, which is Rapidfire Renekton. In order to play this comp, the opener is essentially the Kog Maw opener with Kog Maw, Kindred, Skarner, and +1 Vanguard like Vi or Sylas. The direction you want is to have swords so you can make IE and Gunblade for Zeri, since Zeri is going to be your primary carry, and you need a rapid fire emblem in order to play this board. The playstyle you want to do is a win streak, or you could play Cypher if you want a lose streak to gain a pan, so you can get rapid fire emblem. If you can't get the rapid fire emblem augment, you can just do this way instead as well, so you can gain a pan and just put a bow on it to make rapid fire emblem. Augments you can do is item or combat. Next to that is items or combat again, and lastly is combat. The emblems you would want is rapid fire on Renekton. I forgot to change this. So the artifacts you want to play around Zeri is Flickerblades. This item is actually really broken. You can also do Sniper's Focus. You can also do Gambler's Blade as well, is decent. And then for Sejavani's case, whatever tank ones you can find is really good. And Horizon Focus, since she hits the whole board with her stun. This item allows you to do true damage if you stun a unit. And the best items you can put on Sejavani would be the mana tank items like Spirit and Protector's Vow. And the best Exotech items you could put around Zeri at least is Flickerblades or Pulse Stabilizer. But in most cases, you probably put on whatever you can on Zeri, since if you force this comp, you might not have a good Exotech item, which is fine. And then whatever tank items on Sejavani is okay. The two extra tips I can give for this comp is, yes, you have to position like this because the way how Zeri's ability works, you want more space for her to be in the backline still, because if you put all these units in the backline, the issue is she's going to be in the second row, since there's going to be no gaps for her to dash around. And in this case, yes, you would have put Renekton on Zeri because Zeri's going to have high amounts of damage, and that's why you need Gunblade on her so she can heal herself later. On top of that, having items such as IE or Hodge with QSS or even Starax is really good on Renekton. That's basically about it for this comp. Next comp we're going to talk about here is Naafiri, with specifically having the Spectral Cutlass, or you can play without it. In order to play Naafiri, you need to have like a Naafiri drop to start with, or you could just have nearly 2 to have Naafiri items, that's fine as well. But essentially, it's just Naafiri with Exotech opener with Jhin and Jax, and then have Naafiri to power up your Naafiri. The direction you want to play is either Pulse Stabilizer on Naafiri is a must. If not, you can do Special Cutlass as well, that's okay. And you need Edge of Knight or Cutlass on Naafiri. You have to choose one or the other. There's no point to put Edge of Knight when you have Cutlass, because Cutlass is basically an Edge of Knight. So you pick one or the other. The playstyle you want to play this comp is a win streak, because if you have Spectral Cutlass, then that means you're probably going to be winning most of your rounds early game. The augments you want to pick is Artifact, so this means that you can pick one of these artifacts, or you can pick a reroll augment, so you can reroll for Naafiri 3. And then after that is either items or combat, if you don't have good items on Naafiri. And the last augment you can pick is either combat, or if you don't have decent items for your board, then you can pick item instead of combat. The emblems you want is strategist, you can just throw it on Samara, that's fine. And then for artifacts we're going to be talking about here is Spectral Cutlass, which is the one we talked about the most. And this item allows you to go to the back line, just one shot whoever's back there. Or you can do range Naafiri, which is pretty decent as well. Or the second best, which is Prowler's Claw, which allows you to basically just one shot the board. And your secondary carry is going to be Yuumi, so her items could be either for artifacts, which is a Malazane or a Zhonya's. Either one's great. And that's basically about it. For this board, essentially, it's just all the A.M.P units you can throw on the board, some strategists like Nico and and Echo because this allows you to get Street Demon if you throw in a Samira, and then just the 2 Exotech, which is Sejuani and Jax. If you want to learn more in-depth guide of this comp, I do have a video with this thumbnail here. Just look for it on my YouTube channel if you want to learn how to play this comp fully. Next up we're going to talk about is the Veigar comp, and specifically is having an augment. You can play this from a Nitro standpoint. If you high roll Nitro with Veigar, it's pretty fine to do so without augment, but if you want to play the strongest version of Veigar, it's going to be this, which is the new high score, which is the augment for Veigar, because you get a Veigar and you get a Poppy, and to fill up the units, you want to have Jax for Bastion and having a Xayah for that techie on the board. To play this comp, you want to reroll level 6, and when you hit level 6, you have Xayah. Instead of Jax, it'll be Shyvana, and then you have Echo on the board, plus a Mundo, so that can give you Street Demon on the board, and you'll throw in a Mordekaiser, so you have 4 techie, then you have 2 Bastions, and then a Street Demon on the board. Once you 3-star Veigar, depending on your new high score, you will get a Ziggs, and then you can play Ziggs at level 7, and then level 8, just throw in Nico if you can find her, or if you're lucky enough you can get Kubuko. I would prefer to have Kubuko in over the Nico, and then trade out Xayah for Bran because he's a better unit, and that's basically about it. Then Fast 9, just put in either Kubuko or Nico, whichever one you have left over, and then you can finish the game off that way. For artifacts, you would want to have either a Malazane or Zonia's on Veigar, and then for Poppy, whatever tank wants is fine. The playstyles, potentially you want to play for win streak, so this means that if you're going to pick this augment, you should know that you should be win streaking, and you need blue buff on Veigar no matter what. So that means if you're going to pick this augment, you should have at least a tier drop, and then the augments you want to play around is either artifact or reroll augment, so you can 3-star Veigar pretty easily, and then the third augment could be items or combat. I forgot to fix this, I'll fix it later, where it's supposed to show like first you're supposed to get new high score, and if you get an emblem, the best one to take would be Strategist. Next up we got is Fiddlesticks, and a lot of people know how to play this comp, but for those of you that don't know how to play it, essentially your opener you want is either Fiddlesticks start, or you can play with Morgana with +1 Dynamo and all bruisers, or you can do 3 bruisers, it's totally up to you. If you have a bruiser spat, then it'll be really good to play 4 bruiser on the board. The direction you want is to have either artifact or bruiser crest, either one's fine, and you need at least 1 archangel staff on Fiddle. 2 is ideal, but if you don't have an archangel staff on him, he won't be strong enough to be doing a lot of damage, so you need to do with an archangel staff. The playstyle you kind of want to do with this comp is a win streak. Most of the time you want to be loose streaking, but ideally you want to look for a win streak if you can. And the augments you want to take is artifact or reroll, or you can do bruiser emblem. And items and then second to that is items or combat, and the third augment is item or combat again. For emblems you want bruiser. If you put on Fiddle, it's OP. And the best artifact obviously is Blind Jeweled on Fiddlesticks, but you can also do Sniper's Focus or Zonia's. Zonia's is kind of like the worst one, but it's still pretty decent overall. And then the other person you want to put artifacts on is Mordekaiser, because you want to 3-star Fiddlesticks, Mordekaiser, and Gragas. Because when you're playing for this comp, you want to play level 7, just 3-star both Fiddlesticks and Mordekaiser. But as long as you Fiddlesticks level 3, just fast 8 or 9 to play more better units on the board. Next up on the list we got is the Divinicorp Zed, and this is actually one of my favorite comps to play. If you cannot play Divinicorp Vex, you can also play this comp. Essentially to do this, the opener would be Morgana with Alistair, a Mundo, and a Shaco. They give really good synergies together because you get 2 Bruiser, 2 Slayer, and Morgana just provides Divinicorp. The direction you want for this board is to have Divinicorp emblem, and you just throw it on Shaco. That's the reason why I prefer Shaco and Mundo together. And the items you need, no matter what, is IE on Zed, because it's one of his core items to do damage. The playstyle you want to do is either win or lose streak, totally up to you. You'll play lose streak Cypher, or you can win streak with whatever you have as an opener. And then the augments you want is emblem, or you could do econ. Either one's fine. You have to somehow get the Divinicorp emblem either way. And second to that, it would be items or combat, and then afterwards it could be same thing, items or combat, depending on what you need. The best artifacts you can put on Zed is either Infinity Force, Death Defiance, or Mittens. And then for Vex's case, because she's going to be your secondary carry, either Malazane, Fish and Bones, or Lichbane is really good on her. And to note here, to have Armor Shred item, so you need either Last Whisper on Senna, or either Even Shroud on J4. And whatever tank items you have, you can throw on J4. And then for Vex's case, you kind of need blue buff plus anti-heal, or you can do Gunblade on her, is also fine as well. You can BIS her too with like the Guard Breaker plus Gunblade with blue buff, that's also fine, but you want to focus on Zed items. And the main thing you want to note here is to have Garen, because Garen could give you Divinicorp modifier, so you put that modifier on Zed, and the emblem will pop off. Just throw the emblem on Garen, and Zed can have a +1 free item slot. So you can put whatever item you want on him. Like for example, you can put that on Edge of Knight, or you can throw on Starax, either one's great. And then if you get a different modifier that's not Divinicorp, hopefully you get Slayer, and throw Slayer modifier on Renekton is really good. Next up on the list we got is Zeri, and Zeri, in order to play her, is you need to have some sort of good Exotech item. The opener you want to do is the Kog Maw opener style with Kog Maw, Kindred with Skarner, and +1 Vanguard like Vi or Sylas, either one's fine. The direction you want is both for Gwynsu's, and you need to have at least good Exotech item on Zeri. Like, you need either Pulse Stabilizer or Flux Capacitator. That's the only way to play Zeri. If you have Hollow Bow, it's decent, or even Hyper Fangs is also decent, but it's not going to be strong enough to get you a top 4. So you need either one of those items. And the playstyle you want to do is Win Streak, or you can play Loose Streak Cypher. Either one's fine. The items you kind of want to go for is Econ or Item, and the second of that could be Item or Combat. Third one could be Item or Combat again. And the board to play here is basically the variation of playing with Zeri and MF as your dual carry, and you also have Sejuani as your main tank. So essentially, whatever tank Exotech item you get, just throw it on Sejuani, and then hopefully the good damage ones, like I said earlier, Flux Capacitator, which is the yellow one, or the red one, Pulse Stabilizer, either one's good on Zeri. And the positioning is kind of like this. The main reason why is because you want Zeri to dash around with enough space, and Last Whisper on MF is really good because she'll armor shred the whole board, what will make Zeri could do extra damage on the board. If you cannot get Sejuani 2, it's fine. You could just make Mordekaiser 2 as a main tank for now until you find Sejuani 2 later, and just transfer the items over when you get her level 2. The artifacts you want to play around Zeri is either Flickerblades, which is super broken on her, or Sniper's Focus is fine, or even Gambler's Blade's okay. And then for MSKs, Mana Zane or Collector is really good on her. And then whatever tank items you can find on Sejuani, either one is great on her. Next up we got is Flickerblades Vayne. So if you miss playing Vayne reroll, this is like the only way to play it. In order to play this comp, the opener you need is to have Vayne with all the Anima squads like Seraphine and Sylas, because Anima squad opener for this patch is very strong since you get 10% or 5% more extra damage than you did before. And just have a +1 Vanguard like Vi is really good. If you're lucky enough, you can probably find J4 to get Slayer with Vayne. And the direction you want is Flickerblades. If you don't have Flickerblades, Vayne will not be powerful enough to play this board. And you need Gwynsu's Rage Blade and Kraken on Vayne so she can do a lot of damage. The playstyle you want to do for this board is Win Streak, because once you get Flickerblades, you should be winning straight up with this board. The augments you kind of want to go for is Artifact, so you can get Flickerblade, or you can do reroll augment if you can somehow get Flickerblades without an augment. After that is items, so you can gain your BIS on Vayne. Then lastly, you could get either an item augment again or combat augment if you already have good items on the board. And the emblem you can get is Divinicorp on Zed. Other artifacts you can play around Vayne is if you cannot get Flickerblades for whatever reason, I would advise to not play this board, but if you still do it, Sniper's Focus or Gambler's Blade is fine on her. And Zed could be your secondary carry, or Senna, whichever one's fine for you. But for Zed's items, it would be Death Defiance, Infinity Force, or Mittens. And then to note here is that J4, you kind of need Even Shroud on him, or you can put Last Whisper on Senna and put Senna next to Vayne, so they have armor break item next to the main carry. And then anti-heal, which is like Sunfire, or you can throw any anti-heal item on Senna, that's fine as well. And whatever +1 tank item you can find on J4. This comp, you want to reroll at 7, not 6. Even though Vayne's a 2-cost unit, which is normally you want to reroll at 6, the reason why you roll at 7 is because you could potentially get J4 3 with level 3 Senna as well, and you can complete this whole board. And then once you get level 8, you just throw in Renekton to have that extra power on the board. That's basically about it for this comp. Next up we got is one of my favorite comps to play because it's super powerful if you get this emblem, which is Urgot Boombot. This comp is actually really strong if you can get the emblem. Essentially the opener is just a Kog Maw opener, which we all know by now. It should be Kog Maw, Kindred, Skarner +1 Vanguard like Vi or Sylas. The direction you need is the emblem, and the items you would need is Kraken, so you have to force that item no matter what for Urgot because it's one of his best items to have, and is really good on Kog Maw as well in the early game. The playstyles you want to do is Win Streak. If you pick Boombot Egma, if you pick a Boombot emblem and you think you're gonna lose, don't take it. You have to play it from a win streak perspective because you have to fast 9 with this board in order to finish it. Because as you see here, there's going to be using a lot of legendaries. Because if you can't play these units that you see on screen, it's going to be too hard to win the game overall. If you do decide to play this board, the augments you want is Econ or Item. And second to that, it would be same thing, Item or Econ again. And third is Combat or Item if you don't have good items on the board. The artifacts you want to play around Urgot would be Flickerblades, Collector, or Sniper's Focus. And then for Vex, you either want Mana Zane, Fish and Bones, or Lichbane. And then for Cho'Gath, you need either Talisman, the Indomitable, or you can go Hole Crusher, which is also really good on Cho'Gath as well. But that means you have to isolate him. So you can't put Garen and Kubuko around him. You have to make him by himself, so he can gain the extra HP bonus that this item gives. And then for Vex's case, whatever items they have left over, it's fine. Even if you don't have blue buff on her, it's okay. It's just her just to be there just for Boombot as the Boombot emblem holder. Next up we're going to be talking about is the hero augments. That's the reason why it shows like an X. And the first one we're going to be talking about here is Sylas. And the reason why he's strong is because Anima squad is also strong and they also buffed him a little bit. The opener you want to do is some sort of Anima squad with Sylas. The only reason why you want to play this comp is because if you have a level 2 Sylas already before you pick the augment, or if you have a Sylas pair and then when you pick the augment, it gives you 1 Sylas to get level 2 Sylas. The items you would need to build on him is Jewel Gauntlet and Titans, and then +1 on Sylas. And then the playstyle you want to do is kind of a win streak, because if you play lose streak with this comp, you're going to be bleeding out too hard and you're probably going to get an 8th. The augments you want to play around is Hero Augment first. If you can't get good items on Sylas, And then after that is either items or combat to finish off the game. If you get an emblem, the best one to put is Anima Squad on either Renekton or Veigar, whichever one you can find. And essentially it is the Anima Squad board as you see here. Your main tank is going to be a Leona, or you can put it on your other Vanguard until you can find Leona. And instead of using a Jhin at level 9, you're just going to throw in a Viego instead, because it doesn't really matter if Xayah and Aurora doesn't get synergies for this board. It's just because Sylas is going to be really strong and Anima Squad weapons are just going to do all the damage overall. But if you do decide to have AD items, just put it on Xayah, and then whatever AP items, throw it on Aurora, and tank items on Leona. Basically about it for that. The artifacts you want to play around Sylas is either Zhonya's or Seeker's Armor Guard. These two are like the only best ones to pick on him. The artifacts don't really matter too much for this board, but the other units you can put artifacts on could be like Xayah with Sniper's Focus, Fish and Bones, or Collector, and then Leona, whatever tank ones you can find on her. Now we're probably going to be talking about the last comp, which is Poppy, and Poppy Hero Augment is actually really strong right now because they buffed her. The opener you want to play is having Veigar, Poppy, and +1 Bastion like Jax. And the reason why is because having Cyber Boss with Poppy is actually very powerful, so you kind of have to look for that Veigar. And the direction you want to do is Hero Augment, and the items you need on her is Bloodthirster on Poppy no matter what, and best items it could be like Jewel Gauntlet plus Hodge. The playstyle you want to do is a win streak, because if you don't, you're going to bleed out pretty hard, and this comp's just not going to be strong enough in the long run if you don't win streak. And the augments you want to do is Hero Augment first, and second to that could be Item, so you can gain better BIS. Third to that could be Item or Combat Augment. And as you're rolling, you can also roll for Veigar 3 if you want to as well, but if you can't, it's fine, because you can just fast 9 and then play for this whole board, which is just all Bastions with all Cyber Boss. Pretty simple. And then for the artifacts, the best ones you can put on Poppy is like Zhonya's or Seeker's Arm Guard, and then for Veigar, his best item is Mana Zane or Zhonya's. And the good thing to note here is you want to have anti-heal on Ziggs, and you can put Voice Staff also on Ziggs, or you can put Onyx Spark on Kubuko. Either one's fine. You kind of need the magic resist shred on the board because Poppy does magic damage. And that's basically about it for all the meta comps in patch 14.5. If you have any questions about any of the comps, I'll try to answer the best of my capabilities. Until then, let's see you guys in the next one. Later.